Hey everyone, welcome back to Virtualization How To. Today I'm thrilled to share a really cool project that's been a game changer for managing my Docker environment. If you've ever wished for a quick and easy way to view all of your Docker containers running across multiple hosts in one place, I've got you covered. I want to share with you a free, simple, and open source Docker dashboard that I've been working on. So let's dive in and take a look. And now a word about the sponsor of today's video. Today's video is sponsored by NAKIVO. Are you looking for a powerful and reliable backup solution for your home lab or enterprise environment? Look no further than NAKIVO Backup and Replication. NAKIVO is an excellent data protection software that offers comprehensive backup and recovery options and lets you use your NAS or a simple VM deployment as a backup appliance. NAKIVO supports a wide range of environments including Proxmox VE, VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, KVM, and EC2 instances, along with SaaS platforms like Microsoft 365. Plus, they offer a free version for up to 10 VMs, and that makes it an ideal choice for both home lab setups and enterprise backups. Now, I know what many of you might comment and say, Brandon, there are tons of tools out there that already do similar things. There is Portainer, there's another Portainer alternative called Komodo, and probably many others. As many of you know, I'm a huge fan of Portainer. I think it's an excellent tool for managing Docker, but it only allows you to see all containers on a specific Docker host that you're focused on with the management dashboard. And tools like Komodo, it allows you to see all of the containers across all hosts, but I wasn't really happy with the all containers view, and it doesn't allow customizing this view to add the metrics and see what I wanted to see. So while it may seem like it's a bit of reinventing the wheel, in the same respect, it wasn't for me in my use case. There wasn't anything out there that did exactly what I needed it to do. And I viewed this as a great Docker project for learning in the home lab that covered topics like building Docker images and writing my own code to build out the solution to pull the metrics that I wanted and I needed in the Docker dashboard. The result was a simple dashboard to give me a view of my Docker containers across various hosts. And here's what the dashboard looks like. So here's a view of the dashboard. At the top, you see the total Docker hosts, which you see I've got 9. The total number of containers, which I think is really neat to see just how many containers that you have running across your infrastructure. So I've got 87 containers. Then also the snapshot time. Now what this signifies is when did the bash script run and collect the information that we see here. So depending on the configuration that you enter when you run your container for that cron job to be set, that is the time that this snapshot interval will reflect. And then also, of course, we've got the handy dandy toggle light mode if you want your eyes to bleed, but by default, we've got it set to dark mode. Now, going across the top, the information that we can see, we've got our Docker hosts. So by default, this is sorted from the Docker host column. So you've got Docker hosts, you can see the host IP addresses, then going along, you've got the container name, and then also you'll notice the logs button next to each container name. So the logs button, if you click that, you will see the last 10 log entries, and some of your containers may not have any recent log entries. We'll find one that's got some logs. So the Grafana container actually has some logs here available. So this is rather handy if you're looking at your containers and you want to just peek at the last 10 log entries. You can see that easily. Also the container image, you can see which image the container is running, and then the tag of that image, which version or which tag of the image is this container running. Also, it gives you the exposed host ports. So if you have host ports that are exposed to the outside network, you're going to see that in this column. Internal IP addresses, also networks, which is really handy if you're troubleshooting or you're just wanting to know which containers are connected to which network. And then also we've got the restart count. Do you have containers that have restarted recently or unexpectedly? Something that may be out of the normal. You can just eyeball this. It gives you a really nice way to see that pretty easily. And also in the volumes column, you're going to see your persistent volume storage that you have allocated for each of those containers. And I also, last but not least, added the uptime column to this solution. And what I like about this is if you have a solution that goes out and checks periodically periodically to pull the latest container image, you may want to see that all of your containers are within a certain lifecycle range. This allows you to easily see that. So if I click and sort by the uptime column, the reverse order of that, I can see if I've got containers that have been up and running for a long time and maybe unexpectedly. Now I know my Mailrise container, there hasn't been a new image released. Some of these I can explain, but if this column reflects information that you think is a bit out of the ordinary, then it helps to clue you in that maybe the solution that you have pulling recent container images either is running into an issue there, or it may not be doing what you expect it to do. So I like this information with the uptime column with the containers. And also the search field that you see here is an instant search. So if I start typing, I automatically see the results of that information. So if you're looking for a specific container, and this was my primary use case, hey, which Docker container host do I have my Pi-hole solution running on? Which Docker host do I have Portainer running on? So this allows you to quickly and easily see those types of information. It's not just the container name that you can search by. You can search for ports, for instance, or IP addresses that you want to take a look at, networks. So basically anything that is displayed in the container dashboard, you're going to be able to search on that information. Let's talk about how it works. The dashboard is built using free and open source tools. It's housed in an Alpine Linux container running a bash script that scrapes data from all of your Docker hosts. The output is written to an HTML file served via an nginx web server. So all in all, the solution is simple, lightweight, and it's effective. It doesn't require installing anything on your target Docker host like an agent of sorts. And that was one of the design goals that I wanted with this Docker dashboard, to keep things simple and easy to manage from a lifecycle perspective. So let's take a look at the Dockerfile as well as the bash script that we're using. So here is the Dockerfile for the dashboard, and I'll just go from the top to the bottom and kind of describe the components, why they're there, and how we use them. So first of all, we're using the Alpine base image for the container. So it's very lightweight. So this is a good choice for the dashboard. Here we're adding some components that we need. We need Bash, Nginx, OpenSSH, JQ, curl, BusyBox for the cron functionality, and time zone data for time zone functionality. We're making the directory for the cron tab. We're setting up that initial cron tab file. We are making an initial directory for HTML where we are going to copy necessary files and resources for the container. Here we're setting the default cron schedule, which is every 5 minutes. However, that can be overwritten when you go to spin up the container. You can actually pass that as an environment variable, as well as the time zone. Also, we are doing some things to set up the time zone dynamically. We're copying the private SSH key into the container, and this is something that you will have to provide when you run your Docker build command. We're copying the bash script, which is getservices.sh, and we'll go through that file and look at what it does here in just a moment. And we're changing, of course, running a change mod for execution on that script. Also, we're copying in just a default HTML file for the container to use as a placeholder until it finishes running the getservices.sh file. So what we're doing in this latter part of the script with this larger section of code is we're creating dynamically this init-cron.sh file. And as you know, this is the file that gets run as the container instantiates. And then after this section of code, we are copying the nginx configuration file. We've got it also in the directory, so it will get pulled into the container image as the image is built. And of course, we're exposing it on port 80. And finally, this is the command that will keep the container running as it kicks off this init-cron.sh script, as we noted, is dynamically created here. So now let's look at the getservices.sh script. And this is really the workhorse of the dashboard solution, as it is the file that actually sets up the HTML structure, as you can see in the top part of the script. And it is also what actually scrapes our Docker container hosts, as we'll see. So just starting at the top, we have the Docker hosts variable here. And this is what actually reads our Docker host from the environment variable that we are able to pass in using either a Docker run command or using Docker compose. And also we see our SSH key. We've got the output file as well as a temp file. Now what the purpose of the temp file is, when the bash script starts to run, it actually writes to the temp file, and this is so we don't disrupt the current containers, docker_containers HTML file that is being currently displayed. So this temp file is what it actually works off of, and then it will overwrite the production dockercontainers.html file once the script is complete. So here, once again, we've got the tables of HTML structure. And then here we actually start the loop of going through a Docker host and gathering the information. So as you can see, we've got our for loop here, and it actually runs just normal Docker commands and formats those, of course, for the HTML table that this data gets inserted into. But these commands are commands that you can run just from the command line, the Docker command line. So scrolling on down, we see the actual move command that moves the temp file over to and renames it to the output file. And that's actually how the dashboard is refreshed after the getservices.sh file completes its run. Now finally, let's look at the nginx.conf file. This is just standard nginx configuration here, but just wanted to give you guys a peek at the basic file that I've got structured. Here we're just telling it to listen on the default port of port 80. The server name underscore and then the semicolon tells us that we can listen on any host. So you don't have to set up a host header for a specific host name coming in, and this just gives you flexibility there. Setting the root directory as well as that index file, which is our docker_containers.html file that gets generated by the get services script. And then finally, just normal nginx access log and error log definitions. Now to set this up, you'll need Docker running on a host, or you can just simply run it locally. A public-private SSH key pair, which is easy to generate with the SSH keygen command, and a few configuration files that I have in the GitHub repository. Here's a directory structure that you'll need to have set up. You'll need the files like getservices.sh, nginx.conf, and the Docker file to actually build the container for the dashboard. Once you have those ready, building and running the dashboard is very straightforward. Okay, so now what we want to do, I want to show you guys that we've got our files in place that we talked about. We've got our Docker file, we've got our getservices.sh file, we've got our key pair, and disregard this file. This is just some playing around I was doing with that init-cron file. And then finally, we've got our nginx.conf file. Now the data directory here is just from a persistent volume mount that I had created using Docker Compose. So disregard that as well. I just wanted to show you guys that we do have those files there. Here's a tree view of the files just to make those a little bit easier to see. So now what we're going to do is actually build the container. And this is the fun part. So we're going to do a Docker build command, and we're going to tag this as Docker dashboard, and the build process begins. Doesn't take long to build the container image. Let me clear this. Now we can do a Docker image ls. As you can see, we've got our Docker dashboard image that was created 7 seconds ago. So that has to be our image file. So now I want to show you the Docker run command that we can use to spin up the dashboard from the image that we just created. So let me paste this in, and we'll go over it line by line from the bottom. First off, we are specifying the Docker dashboard latest image, which is the one that we just created. I'm going to stick an nginx proxy in front of this so I can terminate SSL. So I'm going to connect it to my nginx proxy network. We are naming it Docker dashboard.
we are telling it the host that we want to scrape the metrics from. So this is just a simple list. So if you have other hosts, you just continue to add those, so on and so forth. But at this time, I'm just going to pass in CL Docker, CL Docker 01, and 02. And then, of course, we've got our time zone with the TZ environment variable, and then the cron schedule. So here is where you actually specify how many minutes you want to lapse in between each interval, or even longer. It doesn't have to be minutes. This is just simple cron syntax. So if you want it every 5 minutes, every 15, every 30. So I'm just going to set it to every 15 minutes. And then, of course, we are exposing port 80, which is the inside port that our nginx configuration is listing on. And then I'm exposing 8080 on the outside, just simply because I'm using port 80 already on this Docker host. So I'm just going to expose 8080. And then, of course, we're running it in daemon mode, and there's our port designation. So we're just going to simply run this command, and our container has been created. Now we can verify that. We can go to do a docker ps, and there we go. We've got Docker dashboard, and it's running our init cron script. It's been up for 7 seconds. We can watch this just to see 1820. I like to do this just to make sure that we don't have anything that's crash looping in the container once we spin it up. So this is a good way to just kind of watch it for a few seconds, and it would most likely have crash looped before now. So I'm pretty confident everything is good at this point. If you prefer Docker Compose, here's a sample file. Just define your hosts and ports, and you're good to go. So why use this dashboard? For me, it's perfect for home lab environments or anywhere else where you want to have a simple way to query all of your running Docker containers across multiple container hosts. So if you're like me and you have those dozens of containers and you want that quick overview, all the containers without the overhead of more complex tools running agents, this is a lightweight, easy to set up, and highly customizable solution. Also, unlike some other dashboard type solutions out there, and you know what everything is doing, and you can customize it to your liking. I found it really useful for monitoring everything from testing setups to production-like environments. It helps me to keep an eye on things like the uptime of my containers. Do I have containers that are not being respun as I think they are? What about container restarts? Do I have a container that's actually restarting on me every so often due to a failure or some type of application error? Well, I can easily see that with this Docker dashboard. So please do try out this project. It's something that you might want to take a spin in your home lab. Feel free to suggest improvements to the code and even submit a PR, and I will merge the approved code back in the project for enhancements. Well, I hope you like this project. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more awesome projects and virtualization content. Until next time, stay safe out there, keep on home labbing, and I will see you in the next video.